By social justice, we are talking about justice in the distribution of wealth, opportunities, privileges, and rights. So, if we are talking about social justice, you can talk about social justice in the family, you can talk about social justice in a state, in the nation, and even in the global community. So, people must be able to have access to wealth, the wealth of the nation, the wealth of the family, the wealth of the state, and so on and so forth. The moment people don't have access to wealth, everyone does not have access to wealth, does not have access to any of the privileges that are there in the state, in the nation, in the family, of course, there will be social injustice. And of course, you know that when we talk about the principles of social justice, there is access, there is equity, and then of course you are talking about participation. Now, do we have all these things there, you know, in families that we have around us? Do we have such opportunities out there in the different homes, in the state, in the nation? If you listen very well, you will notice that there are grievances. People are expressing grievances over so many forms of injustices. And so you can feel social injustice even wherever you find yourself as far as this country is concerned. Now, recently we are talking about access to health care, particularly now when we are talking about this pandemic and people are talking about access to vaccines. Some nations cannot easily access vaccines. That's social injustice. So when we talk about social justice, we must have access. How do we distribute the opportunities that we have? When you talk about jobs, so many youths are out there roaming the streets. They don't have access to jobs. Some few people in some places, but you know, because of maybe certain privileges or where they come from or certain religions they belong to, they have access to some things others don't have. Or you talk about certain people are privileged to know one or two persons, others don't have, you know, such access. You think people will be happy? So there is social injustice that is becoming palpable, you know, in the society nowadays. The International Labour Organization had this as a day to call nations together, to call individuals together, to call families together, to make sure that social justice is protected. The moment that is not there, of course, there will be no peace. Recently, we are talking about NSAS movement, NSAS protests. You know, out there in America, there had been movements. The Black Lives Matter, a situation where because of your race, you are not safe, you are not secure. You know, once these things are there, there will be no social justice. So the International Labour Organization, and in fact the global body, the UN, found it necessary to ensure that, you know, social justice is protected so that there will be peace. If there is no peace, it was somebody that said, for as long as the poor people, you know, are not able to sleep because they are hungry, the rich people will not also be able to sleep because the poor people are awake. So that's symbolic of what is happening in terms of social justice. So Social Justice Day, or the Global Day for Social Justice, is a call to remind us that whether as a family or as nations, as tribes, we should be able to ensure that people have access to all the privileges, to opportunities, whether opportunities to get admitted, opportunities to get jobs, opportunities to health care, all forms of, you know, opportunities. Those things should be made available to people so that there will be peace. The social justice system, from all indications, I will not score Nigeria 25%. I will not score Nigeria 25% because take the case of, let's take those with disabilities. Opportunities for employment are always coming every now and then. You know, when they come, do they consider those with disabilities? They don't. Until such people make protests, one or two may eventually be considered, if at all. Now, when opportunities come for jobs, for people to get employed, you know, whether as corporate organizations, as government agencies, they now begin to tell you, you must have 10 years experience, 5 years experience. That's social injustice. You've not given the opportunity for them to even get the jobs. Where will they get the experience? Youth cannot get access to employment because of such, you know, standards that they lift to make sure that these people don't have, you know, access to such things. So they don't have. Now think about the issue of admission. In some places, they say, okay, they are educationally disadvantaged. Some others are not educationally disadvantaged. Now look at here in the Niger Delta. Some people who want to get jobs or get admitted, and because of where they come from, look at the oil coming from this part of the world. You know, we have all of us have access to the common good, the common source of revenue that Nigeria has. Now at the end of the day, you cannot feel the impact of oil exploration here in this part of the world. Look at the black suit. You know, for some time now, black suit has been there, and nothing concrete is being done to make sure that people, you know, are taken care of by way of remediation and so on and so forth. So I think that we need to address such issues, because if they are not addressed, there will always be grievances. Grievances in the society, grievances in families, grievances even as a nation. So these things need to be looked into so that people will be able to have a feel of what social justice should actually be. If we talk about social justice in terms of development, like I just mentioned the case of Niger Delta, look at the roads. We have the East-West Road. East-West Road had been under construction for several years. Now in some places in the same nation, if they start a road project today, in the next 1 year or so, that road is completed. The road project is completed. Now here from the Niger Delta, where we have the oil, revenue, you have talked about the issue of this road project being there for years, from one administration to the other. And when it comes close to, you know, election period, that's when again more promises will be made. Look at the case we are talking about here in the Ogoni project, the Ogoni cleanup. Until we are very close to election again, you will not be talking about cleanup being resurrected, the idea being resurrected. These are all issues that can bring about grievances in the minds of people, whether they express or not. But you know that when grievances are bottled up, no matter how you try to suppress, one day those grievances will come up. And an example is what has just happened recently, the NSAS protest. So the government needs to do something, whether at the state level or the federal level, to address some of these inequalities so that people will be able to have opportunities to the common good, which will make people to be happy. For instance, now the issue of voting rights. Voting rights is one aspect that we also talk about in social justice. Some people feel that they are deprived. You can be in the same state, the same nation, and then one particular group benefits, the other group does not benefit. That is social inequality, that's social injustice. And for as long as one group continues to dominate, continues to benefit. You know, you talk about roads, you talk about infrastructure, you talk about building of institutions, universities, and so on and so forth. Some parts of this country continue to benefit, and the others do not benefit. Definitely, these grievances will continue to be there, and then at the end of the day, I think the youths are even those who are at the end of all these problems that we are talking about. They seem to be the highly deprived people, and it's not very good for this nation. It will be necessary for people to come together to dialogue. Let people, the youths, people with disabilities, the young people, the elderly, let there be a common ground for people to talk about issues relating to this nation. People have talked about constitutional review, and that seems to be an issue that is unending. We need to revisit the core of our existence as a nation. So dialogue is number one. Number two, the efforts. Look at the last national dialogue we had. So much money was expended. At the end of the day, what did they do with the results, with the report of that national dialogue? If we are able to remember or revisit some of the reports that had ever been had concerning different things that have affected us as a nation, we'll be able to make progress from there. So where recommendations are made, those recommendations should be implemented. When you don't implement them, of course, at the end of the day, people still remain, underprivileged. They still remain in a situation where they are not happy about different things going on, around them. So we must talk, and then when people have talked, implementation is one aspect. And then people must seek opportunities to redress some of the injustices. Whether there will be judicial review, whether there will be constitutional review, whatever reviews that will be necessary, people should take, particular attention. They should give particular attention to some of these things so that people will be happy wherever they are. In families, for instance, there are families where only the boys are educated. The girls are left out. There are those places where, the girls are given attention, the boys are not. These are also forms of injustices. So these things at different levels should be addressed so that people will be happy. Now, recently we are talking about the NSAS issue. Now, different panels, different tribunals, different, bodies have been put together to address some of these things. How long will these things continue to be? Now, when the reports, eventually come, whether, at the state level or at the national level, will they be implemented? The people that are found culpable in one area or the other, will necessary sanctions be used to at least make them know that these things that they did in the past, had to be, addressed the way they are supposed to be addressed. So these things need to be looked into so that people at least will be able to have that sense of belonging, that they belong to either a family or as nations. It is often said that justice delayed is justice denied. I want to mention that it is necessary that whatever injustices that people have suffered in the past, the moment you discover that people have gained knowledge about these things and they want these things to stop, it is necessary to address them right away. Well, they say a problem discussed is half solved. So if matters have been discussed, they need to be addressed. That's one aspect. Now, in relation to mental health, I had already mentioned here that when there is social injustice, people are not happy. Now, when people are not happy, of course, recently there had been reports on the rate of suicide in this country and beyond. There is, the poverty level has risen. We talk about the unemployment level has also risen. Recently, the National Bureau of Statistics had brought some statistics known to us about issues relating to unemployment. So, if we have these things there, glaring before our eyes, we need to address them. We need to address them. If they've not been addressed in the past, they need to be addressed now that we know that people who were, maybe yesterday they were docile. Yesterday they didn't think about such things. Or they thought about those things but they didn't come out to express. Now, the youths, children are aware of their rights. Women are aware of their rights. So if they are aware of their rights, even widows, there is even some communities, widows are treated as if they are not human beings. Now, social injustice is also there. It's felt by them. Now, we need to understand that these things need to be addressed. So, back to the issue of mental health. When people are not happy, they live in fear. When they live in fear, the next thing is they get depressed. Depression ultimately brings about suicide tendencies. Now, when people are not happy, one of the things that will come up is violence, aggression. They tend to manifest issues that are bottled up in such ways that the society will not be ready for them. So it is important that we address these things. Now, come to the issue of mental health policies, mental health issues generally. Now, take the case of any average state. So much attention is given to several other aspects of mental health, several issues of health. How many mental health institutions do we have? From psychiatric hospitals to clinics, that will address issues relating to mental health. In this state, for instance, we talk about, psychiatrists. You talk about psychiatric social workers, psychiatric nurses. You talk about guidance counselors. You talk about psychologists. Now, how many of our schools have guidance counselors that are there, resident in those schools, addressing issues that are of mental health, implications? We don't have. In some states around us, efforts have been made to try to get these experts in some of these schools. But until we have it as a policy that is implementable and eventually implemented, we will not be able to get out of these things. So attention should be given to mental health issues. If you don't give attention to mental health issues, it's still a form of social injustice. If you make people not to be participants in issues relating to them, you are still creating social injustice. So people must be able to participate, because participation is one aspect, one principle of social justice. People should participate in issues relating to them. People should, in different forms, in different fora, be participants, and then should have time to talk about matters that relate to them. So that at the end of the day, people will be happy. We talk about, rotational presidency, rotational distribution or whatever. So in some places, palliatives are given to some people, are not given to some people. And you think those who are not given will be happy. They can't be happy. So these things need to be addressed, and addressed squarely. To round up our discussion, I want to say that the call for social justice this year, particularly in this period of pandemics, the theme talks about digital divide. Now, the digital divide for us in academics, for us in institutions of higher learning, and in fact, institutions dealing with, in the education sector generally, we've been talking about e-learning. How many schools can implement e-learning very effectively? So you can even find the issue of social injustice there. In some schools, students stayed away. Of course, during the pandemic, students stayed away for a very long time. So government at all levels should try to ensure that this digital economy is taken care of. There should be access to it, and then there should be equitable distribution of wealth. Certain areas should not be favored more than others. People should have a sense of belonging in families, as a nation, as a state, and in different other aspects of our living. In the place of work, whether you are talking about junior workers, you are talking about senior workers, everybody should have a sense of belonging. Don't favor one group as against the other. The moment you continue to do that, those who are not favored will not be happy. People with disabilities should be considered, should be given opportunities to get employed. They should be given the opportunities to get admitted, whether into undergraduate programs, postgraduate programs, wherever. Fortunately for us at the Ignatius Ajuru University of Education, we have a number of them who are coming in. But then even as they are coming in, we don't have the resources to take care of them. So we still call upon the government to try and see how issues relating to people with disabilities can be addressed. In the classrooms, we have the people who are dumb, we have those who are deaf, we have those who are blind, and then if you don't have all the resources, even the personnel that can address such things, it means that if these things are not made available, we are denying them access to education. And of course, human rights is one of the things we are talking about here in social justice. So let every opportunity be made available to everybody so that that sense of belonging will be there, and then the grievances can be properly addressed. Thank you very much. So I wish our nation and of course the global community happy Social Justice Day come February 2021.